Yeah, we are. Thank you, Senator Schaefer. And as we represent a large area of, it's called now Korean Town, the area in Pleasant Hill, and you know, very, very honored to represent. And thank you for bringing this forward. You know, as we all know, that area around Gwinnett Place Mall, you know, had over 1.5, 2 million square feet empty. And we're glad that we saw that vibrant community, that diverse community taking over and setting shop there. So I'm very glad that you're bringing this up, because I think we need to give that opportunity for them to keep growing and to keep making Georgia their home. So I thank you. And Mr. Chairman, when you're ready, I'm ready for a motion.
Okay, thank you. Chairman. All right, we got a good fight going here. Now, do we have any other questions before we vote? Okay, I'm ready for the motion.
I do motion that Senate Resolution 941 do pass by committee.
Okay, do we have a second? We do have a second there. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Let's do Senate Bill 353. Senator Beach, if you'll come to the podium. Senator Schaefer, who is going to sponsor that on the floor of the House? Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
All right, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for hearing Senate Bill 353. This was brought to my attention by the Fulton County Development Authority, of which I have Mr. Lou Horn, who is their attorney, and also Mr. Bob Shaw, who's the chairman of that board, is here with us today. And this is a cleanup bill that will clarify some language in development authorities around the state. If you look at Section 1, it clarifies the language about what kind of projects city and county development authorities can undertake. Section H and Section N have similar language. This bill seeks to eliminate the narrow language in Section 8 regarding hotel and motel projects connected to convention, sports, and trade show facilities. And that's what this bill is really about, is addressing this hotel issue. Section 2 deletes a citation in OCGA 3662-3 that is contrary to language found later in the code section. Then in Section 3, we add the term "if any" to paragraph 13 of Section 6 relating to the general powers of development authorities as it relates to the issuance of revenue bonds. And then in Section 4, the last section, mirrors some language that was found in a House bill from 2 years ago, House Bill 844. This section seeks to address ambiguities in the code. Today, what the code does, Mr. Chairman, is the Attorney General or the District Attorney must be present in the court during bond validation hearings. This revision puts the burden on the authority to make the case for the validation of the bonds. The language in the code section today is ambiguous and has been cited in several recent Georgia Supreme Court opinions. This is exploited by opponents of development authorities statewide. And then finally, since this bill grants development authority projects tax-exempt status, the passage of this bill will create jobs. This is supported by GMA, ACCG, the Fulton County Development Authority, and the Atlanta Development Authority, Invest Atlanta. So we feel this has got a lot of widespread support, and it's good policy. So with that, I'll answer any questions and would ask for your favorable consideration of SB 353.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions regarding Senate Bill 353? Yes. Push your button there. Yes. There we go. Try that.
All right, thank you.
Representative Abel Mabel Thomas.
My good friend, Senator Beach, what I'd like to know is, it just so happened that the stadium, the new proposed stadium in Atlanta, is in my district, and there is just a little unrest in terms of the community, and subsequently, at the bond hearing that was going to take place, there was a group of plaintiffs that basically put a lawsuit in to slow down the bond situation, and they felt some issues were unconstitutional. So without knowing all the details of this, because it did mention something about a bond hearing, how will that affect, a neighbor, or how does it?
If it's okay with you, Representative, I'm going to refer that to Mr. Luhorn, who's a bond attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Beach. Representative Thomas, that will not affect it at all. Under the law, the validation law, any citizen can come forward and challenge a bond validation. You know, Georgia has judicial validation. That has my understanding is what's taken place with the stadium. There was a change in the law by the courts that said they had to file intervention papers, but they're properly before the court, and this bill will have nothing to do with them. And the courts will then, Judge Glanville will be able to decide their case on the merits, and our bill will not touch any aspect of that matter. No, ma'am. It doesn't limit the public's access to the validation procedure. It clarifies. In fact, what it does, it clarifies what the issuing authority may present to have a full record for people challenging the bond validation to consider. There were some gray areas before, and now they're clearer. Well, initially in the Development Authority's law, there were some limitations on doing tax incentive deals for hotels, motels, and nursing homes. In 1992, this General Assembly enacted a law which basically said development authorities had broader latitude. So the problem is, what we've had over the years is a competition between the narrower limiting provisions and the broader provisions that came after the fact. So what we're doing is, when we take out the language in Section 1 about hotels, it doesn't mean you can't do hotels. It means that those limitations no longer apply because we're traveling under the 1992 law.
Okay, thank you. Representative Grab. Okay. You should be on now.
They have 30 days from the judgment of validation entered by the judge. 30 days to file an appeal, and then basically you're on the whatever schedule the appellate courts. Either if they appeal to the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals, you're subject to their calendar. But they have to respond in 30 days.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee.
Okay. Do we have a motion? All right, we have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of Senate Bill 350, is it 353? Yeah. Say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Oh, who's going to sponsor, who's going to carry that in the... All right. Thank you, Ed Lindsay. Okay, that's it for today. No. Now we'll turn to our Chairman Stevens. If you will come and talk to us about House Resolution 1601.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, as you might remember, it seems like yesterday whenever we first passed the Film Development Act, and at the time we were doing about $200 million a year. Not a whole lot, and we're not even a blimp on the radar when it comes to film development. And now this year we're boasting $3.3 billion with a B, and phenomenal job growth, the planning of infrastructure everywhere with sound stages and film stages. But there's a piece of the bill, and I don't like to admit that there's a fault, but there's a piece of the bill that we should have covered, and that had to do with our homegrown Georgia-based companies. And that's not the companies that might fly in from California, and we appreciate those, or from anywhere else in the world to do their films in Georgia, and we appreciate that a lot. But we've got some very small companies that have made it known that, of course, they don't qualify for the threshold of $500,000 to get the income tax credit of 20% plus the upkick of another 10% if they stamp made in Georgia. What this study committee intends to do, if the Speaker so appoints this thing, is to allow us to, by the numbers, to also include some of our smaller companies that might also do filming outside of the state of Georgia, but brings their film back for post-production. Now, that's a big deal. They're Georgia jobs, which was the intent of this from the very beginning. And I would ask that you would favorably consider this, and if you so desire, step up and sign on to the bill so that we've got a bigger pool if the Speaker decides to make this a study committee. It's a piece that we missed, and I hope that you'll support us in not only the study committee, but in developing the legal language for next year for those of us that may come back. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield for any questions.
You know, Mr. Chairman, down in South Georgia, we have taken full advantage of some of those built a soundstage, and we've got our county's film ready, and it's really, really taking off. And thank you for what you have absolutely made a wonderful business for the state of Georgia. We appreciate you. Chairman Pruitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's on. Hello.
You are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Chairman, thank you. I wondered if as a friendly amendment, we may look at line 14 and where it says committee to be composed of, we could put Jimmy Pruitt and 4 other members.
You know, Representative Pruitt, I will suggest, because this is such an important issue, I would suggest as a friendly amendment as well that we increase that number to 8 so that we can have a much larger pool. And if you'll present that as an amendment.
Well, I think we'll leave the Jimmy Pruitt off, but I would like to amend it to 8, seriously. And certainly the Speaker has the one that makes the decision on who is going to be on this committee, and I thank you for that. And this is a great opportunity for us because, as you know, in session, we have very little time to really dig into the problems and the things that we could do to change and help the film industry the way we should. And it's certainly been a wonderful, wonderful program in the past. And I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, there's much more we can do with the better knowledge that we could gain through the study committee. And with that, Mr. Chairman, at an appropriate time, I would like to revise and do the amendment to say 8 members in lieu of 5 members.
We have one other question before we get to your amendment there. So if you'll just hang on there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we can call it the Pruitt Task Force. But I'd like the amendment to include 8. And again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this up again in my area. You know, we have the OFS, the optical fiber plant that is turning into a really one of the jewels of Georgia and becoming one of the largest studio in the country. So that's developing as we speak. And also, I would like to do a friendly amendment besides putting it to 8 members to have a bipartisan committee as well. So thank you for bringing this up, and I'm looking forward for the motion and to vote yes on it.
Okay, thank you. Representative Gravely.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions from the author? Okay, I'm going to give both of y'all time to get together and make one substitute motion there.
All of these appointments are made by the speaker. I certainly feel like in the past he's always been fair. When you say bipartisan, not necessarily equal numbers, but just make sure that we have some from both parties on and I think we just do that as an encouragement, I believe, rather than a mandate in the legislation, if my colleague would agree with that.
Okay, thank you.
Therefore, on line 14,
Okay, line 14.
where it says composed of 5 members, we change that to 8 members.
Okay. You've heard the substitute motion there. Any questions? No, hearing no objections, we adopt the substitute change on line 14, composed of 8 members of the House of Representatives there. Okay. Now let's go to the the House resolution itself, 1601. Do we have a motion? All right, we have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? And of course, this is by substitute. Okay. All those in favor of House resolution by substitute to House resolution 1601, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, Mr. Chairman, you have your. Oh, yes, sir.
Before you adjourn, Mr. Chairman, if I may, the department asked me to, and I'll send you an email to this effect, on March the 18th, 19th, which of course I'll be in Savannah, but for those of you that might like to attend the Innovation Logistics over at the Trade Center, the 6th Annual Georgia Logistics, if you'll get in contact with me, we'll make sure that you get in for free. It's a big deal, and we've got the department here. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We're adjourned.